The Gulag Archipelago, Stalin's monstrous system of slave labor. Picture a place so brutal, so inhumane and so unimaginable that even its mere existence defies comprehension. A place so monstrous that it would forever change the course of history. This is, my friends, a look back into Stalin's Gulag Archipelago. Hello and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Eccentric History. In today's deep dive, we're going to explore the appalling and atrocious world of the Soviet Union's most infamous forced labor camps. But before we begin, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated on all our latest content. The origins. So let's start at the very beginning. The Gulag, which stands for Glavno Upravlenie Lageri or Main Camp Administration, was a massive network of forced labor camps throughout the Soviet Union. The seeds of the Gulag system were planted during the Bolshevik Revolution, which took place in 1917, led by Vladimir Lenin. The Bolsheviks seized power and established the world's first socialist state. With the new Soviet government in place, the Bolsheviks were quick to establish a system of repression to maintain their grip on power. In 1918, Lenin signed the infamous Decree on Red Terror, which established the foundation for a secret police force known as the Cheka. The Cheka was responsible for hunting down and eliminating any perceived threats to the Soviet regime, including political dissenters and so-called class enemies. In the early years of the Soviet Union, political prisoners were often detained in makeshift camps or prisons. However, it wasn't until the 1920s that the idea of a more organized system of forced labor camps began to take shape. In 1929, the Soviet government established the Gulag. It's important to note that while the concept of the Gulag was born under Lenin's rule, it was Joseph Stalin who transformed it into the monstrous system of slave labor that we know today. After assuming power in 1924, Stalin significantly expanded the scope and scale of the Gulag in order to fuel his ambitious industrialization projects and consolidate his own power. The Gulag system reached its peak during the 30s, particularly during the Great Purge from 1936 to 1938, which housed millions of prisoners. In essence, the Gulag Archipelago can be traced back to the earliest days of the Soviet Union and the ruthless tactics employed by its leaders to maintain their grip on power. It was a system born out of fear, paranoia, and an insatiable hunger for control, and it would leave a lasting impact on the lives of millions of innocent people. The Great Purge. Now that we've set the stage, let's take a closer look at arguably one of the darkest and most grim periods in Soviet history, the Great Purge. It's important to understand the backdrop against which the Gulag system flourished. Picture this, it's the mid-1930s and Joseph Stalin is feeling increasingly paranoid and power-hungry. He fears that his enemies, both real and imagined, are plotting against him. So what does he do? He unleashes a wave of terror unlike anything the Soviet Union has ever seen before. Between 1936 and 1938, Stalin's regime initiated the Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror. This was a systematic campaign to eliminate any perceived threats to Stalin's rule. And when I say any, I mean it quite literally. Academics, military officers, government officials and everyday citizens, no one was safe from the paranoid gaze of Stalin's secret police. An estimated 1.5 million people were arrested and hundreds of thousands were executed or sent to Gulag. We know what you're thinking, surely there must have been some semblance of due process or evidence required for these arrests, right? Unfortunately, that couldn't be further from the truth. Many of those targeted during the Great Purge were accused of being enemies of the people based on the flimsiest of pretexts. Even something as mundane as a poorly timed joke or an offhand remark could be enough to land you in the crosshairs of Stalin's secret police. And once accused, your fate was often sealed. Trials were nothing more than a formality, with most defendants forced to confess to fabricated crimes under the threat of torture. It's during this period of unprecedented fear and repression that the Gulag system truly took root. The ever-growing number of prisoners arrested during the Great Purge provided the Soviet regime with an almost endless supply of forced labor which they used to fuel their ambitious industrialization projects. The Great Purge served as a chilling reminder of the lengths to which a paranoid and ruthless leader will go to maintain their grip on power. It set the stage for the nightmarish world of the Gulag Archipelago, where countless lives were forever changed by unimaginable cruelty and suffering. Life in the Gulag. Now that we have a bit of context, let's take a deeper look into the harrowing experiences of those who found themselves trapped within the Gulag system. Inmates, or zeks, were subjected to unimaginable cruelty and forced to work in treacherous conditions with little to no regard for their health or safety. Let's begin with the living conditions. The zeks were crammed into overcrowded and unsanitary barracks, often sleeping on wooden planks or the cold hard ground. Disease was rampant, with prisoners frequently succumbing to illnesses such as dysentery, typhus and tuberculosis. Medical care was minimal, if available at all, and many zeks were left to suffer or die without any treatment. The issue of hunger is another facet of life in the Gulag that cannot be overstated. Prisoners were given meagre rations that were often barely enough to keep them alive. Malnutrition was widespread, and many prisoners were reduced to eating grass, rats, or even their own clothes in a desperate attempt to stave off starvation. The psychological torture faced by the zeks was just as unbearable as the physical torment. The guards employed a variety of tactics to break the spirits of the inmates, from public humiliation and ridicule to psychological manipulation and mind games. Many prisoners were driven to the brink of madness, and some even took their own lives as a result. To make matters worse, the zeks were also subjected to constant abuse by the guards, who ruled over the camps with an iron fist. The slightest infraction could result in severe punishment, including torture, solitary confinement, or even execution. The omnipresent fear of punishment created an atmosphere of perpetual terror that permeated every aspect of life in the Gulag. As if these horrors weren't enough, the zeks also faced the anguish of being cut off from their loved ones. Many families were torn apart, with parents, siblings and children sent to different camps or left behind. In some cases, prisoners had no way of knowing where their loved ones were, alive or dead, leaving them to grapple with the unbearable sense of loss and uncertainty. The camp economy. An often overlooked aspect of the Gulag system is the intricate and brutal camp economy that developed within these forced labour camps. It's important to highlight this aspect, as it played a crucial role in the daily lives of the prisoners and was an essential component of the Soviet Union's economic strategy at the time. The Gulag camps were designed to extract maximum economic value from the prisoners, who were forced to work in various industries including mining, logging, agriculture and construction. These labour-intensive projects were critical to Stalin's ambitious industrialization plans, and the exploitation of the inmates provided the Soviet Union with a virtually unlimited supply of cheap labour. But it wasn't just the forced labour that defined the camp economy. A complex and often brutal system of exchange emerged, as prisoners sought to survive under the harshest conditions. Basic necessities like food, clothing and medicine were often in short supply, and prisoners had to rely on their resourcefulness and cunning to make the best of their situation. Competition for scarce resources led to a brutal and unforgiving environment within the camps. Prisoners would often steal from one another, and violence was a constant threat. The weak and vulnerable were particularly at risk, as they were often targeted by stronger inmates who saw them as easy prey. The camp economy that developed within the Gulag system was in many ways a microsystem of the larger Soviet economy at the time. It was characterized by scarcity, exploitation and a ruthless struggle for survival. While the prisoners endured unimaginable suffering, the Soviet regime reaped the benefits of their labour, using it to fuel their rapid industrialization and expand their global influence. It's important to remember that these were ordinary people just like you and me, who found themselves trapped in a nightmare beyond comprehension. The strength and resilience they demonstrated in the face of such adversity are a testament to the unshakable human spirit. The aftermath. The devastating impact of the Gulag system didn't end with the death of Joseph Stalin in 1953. As the world began to learn the true extent of the atrocities committed within these camps, the Soviet Union slowly started to dismantle the Gulag system. Under the leadership of Nikita Khrushchev, Khrushchev initiated a period of political liberalization known as the Khrushchev Thaw, during which many prisoners were released and some camps were closed down. However, it's important to note that not all of the camps were shut down immediately, and forced labor continued to exist in the Soviet Union well into the late 1980s. For the survivors of the Gulag, their newfound freedom was bittersweet. Many of them faced a lifetime of physical and psychological scars resulting from the brutal conditions they had endured. Furthermore, the stigma of being a former prisoner made it difficult for them to reintegrate into society, as they often faced discrimination and suspicion from their fellow citizens. It wasn't until the publication of Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn's groundbreaking book The Gulag Archipelago in 1973 that the full extent of the horrors experienced by the prisoners became widely known. This book, written by a former Gulag inmate and Nobel laureate, exposed the reality of life in the camps and became an international bestseller, raising global awareness about the atrocities committed under Stalin's rule. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the definitive end of the Gulag system, but the legacy of this dark chapter in human history lives on. Today, various memorials and museums have been established to honour the memory of the millions who suffered and perished in the camps. These sites serve as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the dangers of unchecked power. For the descendants of the Gulag survivors, the impact of this brutal system could still be felt in their lives. Many families were torn apart with loved ones lost forever in the vast expanse of the Soviet Union's labour camps. The stories of loss, resilience and survival have been passed down through generations, serving as a warning of the devastating consequences of political repression and authoritarian rule. And that's a wrap on our exploration of Stalin's system of slave labour, the Gulag Archipelago. We hope this journey has been as eye-opening for you as it has been for us. Let us know your thoughts on this horrific regime in the comment section below. And of course, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends to help spread the word about this dark chapter in history. Bye for now.